أعون دوش ميا نثبت داش شماخ تأتي ملكوتاخ نهوي سوينخ إكنا دوش ميا أبر حولان لحمة سنكانا يومنا واش وقلان حوبين إكنا داب حنان شوقن لحيوين ولا تعلن لنسيونا إلا بصا من بيشة متول دي لاخي ملكوتة وحي لو تشبحته العالم عالمين Amen. Okay, so this is the third session that I'm doing about the innovation of Jesus and the early church. Talked about different things that that Jesus did, as well as the apostles, all the way from opening up foods that were forbidden and restricted by the Jewish religion, making Christianity a bit more able to accept people. I talked very briefly, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, about circumcision. Circumcision was required for Jewish people, and the early church struggled with that topic. Do we circumcise people who want to come into the religion or not? And if you're new to what we to our teaching, circumcision was more of a passport. People had no way to identify if you belong to this religion or this tribe or that tribe. Sometimes the clothing give away which tribe you belong to, but circumcision definitely told people that you are a follower of the religion of Moses. So then the early Christianity struggled with that. Do we force people to do that or not? And luckily the apostles decided that it's not a requirement, that people can join based on declaring their faith and not necessarily doing a physical operation on their body. So all these things were building on the foundation that Jesus was giving the apostles and gave us during his short ministry. So to continue, other things, these are all, the reason I'm picking this and titling it innovation is because these are foundational pieces that you can build anything in your life on those foundations. The fact that Jesus wanted you to have no enemies and love your enemies, kind of moving forward towards the end of his ministry, when he was being arrested, his apostles took him literally. He was speaking metaphorically. You can find this in Luke chapter 22, about that there is going to be a time when I am now no longer with you, and he has been sending all his apostles or his students on missions to nearby villages to train them on how to spread the joyous message of the kingdom of heaven. That's, again, fundamentally what Jesus was trying to bring. He was trying to bring a dominion, a new way for us to coexist, all humans to coexist in peace based on principles of love and love for one another and love for everybody and caring for everybody. It's a big shift from tribal mentality, from national mentality, from even controlled religion mentality. He saw something in his surroundings that was ready for us to take that next step forward. Now we're talking 2,000 years later, and we've had moments in history and regions in Christianity, Christianity's growth that reflected that concept. But then we also have a lot of dark spots where Christianity veered away. To this day, I think you can find places where the teachings of Jesus and the principles are being practiced, and then there are many other places that declare themselves as Christians, but they're not following the teachings of Jesus and those foundational pieces. So I was talking about when he before he was warning his apostles that he sent them. Basically, he told them, don't take any purses with you, don't take anything with you when you go on your missions. If people will accept you, and they'll take good care of you because you're giving them something that they need. The spiritual food that they were giving these villagers who are struggling under Roman rule and taxation by the temple and the religious authority, that hatred between them and their neighbors. And here comes somebody who's telling them, listen, you can live under those rules and believe that that's reality, or you can elevate yourself and find your peace by becoming a better human being. And if you do suffer under those circumstances, accept that suffering. Sometimes you have to run away from it, you have to step away from it. But if you can tolerate it, the reward of staying true to your to these teachings, to your essence, to your humanity, it is well worth it. That's the ultimate, I guess, scale that you can measure. How much do these teachings mean to you, and how much you're sticking closely to Jesus's teachings is by when you're tested. And I'm not saying you will be tested all the time. I'm not saying that the testing will last. And you might never be tested, because once you really adopt the goodness and people start seeing that in you, you start changing them on top of your own spiritual growth and your own ability and your own light shining even brighter. So this was the message that Jesus was giving his apostles, sending them away. But then he told them towards the end, at least and according to Luke, that there is going to be a time where it's not going to be easy and simple, and that they would have to carry their stuff and take it with them and so forth. I think he was speaking metaphorically, because he ultimately, when the moment of the test came and he was being arrested, and I'm referencing the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, verses 51, 52. One of his followers, one of his students, took a sword out and chopped the ear of one of the people who were arresting him. And Jesus, in both Luke and Matthew, told them stop. In Matthew's, in Luke's, he actually heals the ear of the person who had his some part of his ear cut off by the sword. But he told them that the message that I really want to emphasize is, you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. He really, really did not want a militant movement. That was very risky for him and for us in any time in history. Once you carry weapons, you have veered away from the idea of your humanity, of the idea of loving one another, of creating a nation and creating a world that's based on love and care. So today we have a lot of nations that declare themselves as, and throughout history, as Christian nations. They rule through an association and affiliation with the church. Some of the nations, including ours and the United States, wanted to separate church from government. But if you really listen to the presidents and the candidates when they show their alliances, and that's probably why we don't have a lot of non-Christian presidents. We can count the one or two Catholics and the few who are not in mainstream evangelical Christianity. So things evolved post the early church, and I'm going to share my screen just for 1 second. This is one of the books I'm going to be referencing. It's a great book. So let me do share screen. I'll take it off, but I wanted to show you this. I bought this book. It's written by a professor. He's, I think, at the University of Pennsylvania and somewhere else. This book has been it's one of the few sources where it brings a lot of a collection of information. I'll leave it on here if you want to write it down for a couple more seconds. But what this book talks about is Christianity in the East, and innovation is a part of it. So I'm going to take it down for now. And if necessary, I'll put it in the chat. But what this author is doing is he took, we have the history of Jesus's ministry in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We have early Christianity and maybe some things attributed to Jesus in the Gospel of John. Then we get the Acts of the Apostles and the epistles after that, and talking about the New Testament. But then Christianity in the East today is very hard to actually figure out what happened to it. So what this author has done is he's gone back and tried to trace that early Christianity. How did it move out of Jerusalem and expand? And where did it expand? So, and the big difference for me when I'm reading about the history of Christianity is that in the East, the early messengers followed exactly the same model that Jesus had implemented. They followed trade routes. They went to the areas near them and spoke with people who could understand them, because there are a lot of cultural and religious references in the message of Jesus that would have been hard for somebody who's not Jewish or Near Easterner to understand that. And we see that in early Christianity. As soon as it started going westwards, where a lot of the problems started rising was in misunderstanding some of the things that Jesus had said, or some of the things that were written in the Bible, including being the Son of God or Son of Man, that the relationship with the mother and the father. A lot of those idioms, a lot of these things became contentious. And we saw a very strong, in the year 325, a very strong split between the mainstream Byzantine power and the Christianity it wanted to support, and between the Eastern Christianity that was pretty much declared heretical and excommunicated and actually persecuted heavily. And one thing that when I'm reading this book, you'll see in the innovation of the East, they maintained a less focus on power, and almost I can't say for sure 0%, but it's very, very low percentage, if any, of building the Christianity on militant power. Now this has changed through history, but in the East, one of the reasons we don't have a very strong Eastern Church today and Eastern Christianity today is because the people stayed in line with the meekness. Now, some of them rose very high in political hierarchy and had high positions in governments, even in Muslim governments. And that created a lot of jealousy and a lot of trouble in some of these government systems, because the Christians were beloved, but then they saw them as a threat because it's another religion. But the Christians maintained, you don't hear about Eastern Christians crusading somewhere else. You hear about Christian Easterners joining merchant caravans and going to Central Asia, going to India, going to China, going to Japan. And that part of their innovation is that when they went there, they took the time to understand the cultures they're coming into. And not only that, they collaborated with them and sometimes help them translate some of their own books about their religion, not the Christian religion, not the Bible, but about other religions. They worked really hard at understanding that there are other good people who have different belief systems that we need to coexist with. They didn't carry a sword and force them to convert or die. They didn't try to pull them back and make them pray in Jerusalem, or because remember, one of the things that Jesus did is he almost totally canceled the idea of the temple. He converted the temple from a physical place to a spiritual place, to a place that we own and have wherever we are. That's the temple. That's the new temple because of Jesus. The prophets had a similar idea. So again, he was drawing from the goodness of the religion of Abraham and trying to undo some of the stuff that religion had built over time. So now you're looking at a religion that's expanding based on people being good, wanting other religions wanting to promote them, wanting to align with them, and converting automatically. And the conversion was easier because all it required is for you to say, I want to be a follower of Jesus. And some of them instituted some specific ritual like baptism, but it was simple. You could switch easily. There was no marking, nothing that would make you a follower of Jesus. And then the judgment on that, it was by how you behaved. So there was no measurement of, did you walk so many steps on the Sabbath? Did you do this? Did you do that? It was all like, if you're good and you're behaving well and you're out on a Sabbath, helping people, feeding them, opening your house for the poor to come in, doing all these good things, and at the same time working with other religions, then you're expanding the kingdom of God. You're creating a loving place for everybody to exist in. Versus what happened to a lot of these Christians is when the religions, like in China, the fundamental people decided, and with Buddhism, that they don't want that religion to coexist. It was threatening them because people were starting to behave and have mercy and switch to Christianity. So at one point they decided, okay, no more Christians, and they went and executed a lot of people and forced people to convert back to Buddhism, and expelled a lot of the foreign people who were actually coming and settling there and building that religious foundation. Same thing happened in Japan. Christianity was very strong in Japan, and it got annihilated, near annihilated, because that we have some historical accounts that some Christians stayed hidden because they really truly believed that that's the right way to live and believe. In India, same thing. So and then that what we know today as the Muslim world, what we take for granted as of the year 600 something through like maybe 7th, 8th century, a lot of these areas, Turkey, Syria, Palestine, Iraq, North Africa, all these were Christian centers. And they had, Christianity was the dominant religion because under the Roman rule, it was easy for Christians to travel. And until Islam came and displaced the Roman Empire, the Christianity was the number one religion in these areas. But then they ran into a religion that initially accepted them, but eventually over time started persecuting them. So there were periods in Islam where Islam was loving towards Christians, and then there were times where they were suspicious, especially when the West started attacking. That Western nations under the flag of Christianity created armies and mercenaries and crusaders and started sending them to the Near East to reclaim Jerusalem and the Holy Land and so forth. That really compromised Eastern Christians who had no army to defend them. They did not carry weapons, and they were not aligned with a political system. So, but they continued to exist for a very long time until recent history. I am a descendant of that Christianity, and the story that I was handed in my history is occupiers come and go, but we stay where we are in our villages. We work the land, we love one another, and we continue to exist. And some of us lose their lives in battles and so forth that we're not involved in. But Jesus even told us about that. When people come to your village, and armies do that, they did that in all the wars to this day, armies do that. They come and they steal the food of the villages. Sometimes they force the people in the villages to do manual labor, help them set up camp or carry things from one place to another. Jesus said, do not resist that. Do not resist that. That's evil, that's awful, but tap into the heart of those armies, the people who are doing these things, and by not resisting them, you often survived. You often, and Jesus told his followers, when that specific situation happens, which happened a lot in his time, go along with the situation. He did not tell them join the army and fight and kill other people, but he said, if they want you to carry stuff, carry it not only to this village, carry it to the next village. Offer to carry it, even further what they're asking. And I think that opened the hearts of the soldiers to say, who are these people who are actually, when we go to force them, instead of having to beat them up to do this, they're happy to come and help us. Leave them alone, right? And it's a basic human psychology that Jesus was working with. So, but that's so critical that in today, when we're making decisions about being pro-guns or fighting a war in the name of religion, war is bad, no matter what it is. And there is a point that if you are a true follower of Jesus, you would say, I will not carry the weapon. I will not live by the sword, because I will die by the sword. And that was a very fundamental teaching that he carried forward, and he risked his life often. And so that's one thing I wanted to talk about, which is how do you expand the religion? You don't expand the religion, you expand the dominion of God. You expand the dominion of the kingdom. Even Jesus, when one of the people tried to come to him and asked him, hey, good teacher, what do I need to do? First, he corrected him. He said, why do you call me good teacher? There is only one good, and that's God. That's the pure goodness is God. He always gave God full goodness. That God was all inclusive. His sun shined and warmed good and bad people. His rain blessed good and bad people. So he was constantly reminding them, it's not me, it's not the man Jesus, and I'm not creating a movement of Jesus. I'm creating a place where we all live by God's rule, and God's rule is love. He gives us everything we need, and with faith we get everything we need. And that is a good jumping point for me to talk about innovation and work and today's economy, and how do you take the teachings of Jesus into the business world and be able to function and have a good, successful business. And I think the bulk of our training in business school and so forth is built on competition, on annihilating the competitors, cutthroat type mindset. And a lot of the businesses that the Christians started and were successful in early on, all these early missionaries, they settled in other places, and they became teachers and translators and professors, but they took their industry with them. If they were farmers, they farmed. If they were good with their hands and made things, they did the same thing as they settled and expanded. And they went thousands and thousands of miles away from their homes, believing that they are going to become a spot of light and teach people about this new beautiful message of the kingdom of God. So how do we do it today? Do we it's hard if you belong to an existing corporation, because changing from within or shifting something like that is hard. But taking the teachings of Jesus and not competing and stepping on people every day, or feeling threatened that somebody is going to step on you, is a component of how you can survive true to your belief system in peace. Remember, I talked about the measuring. And Jesus was a master in a lot of his parables. He tells us, like there's a parable about the owner of a I don't think it's an owner of a vineyard, but somebody who was hiring laborers, and he hired the laborers early in the morning and promised them a penny, and then throughout the day he kept going back to the labor market and bringing a few more, and negotiated with them pretty much the same exact deal. And when it was time to pay, and this is a parable, so Jesus was just not exaggerating, but using the parable to teach a lesson. The lesson was that at the end of the day, he paid everybody who worked for him, the ones who started very early in the morning and the ones who started right before sunset, that he paid them the same exact amount. And of course, that for Jesus, he was revving up the crowd, because everybody was going like, but that's not fair. This dude worked 9-10 hours and this dude worked like a half an hour. Why would you pay them the same? What he was teaching there is that you don't necessarily have a hierarchy or an expectation when you're working within the kingdom. People who join the Christianity, the early movement, or join today, they have the same full rights as somebody who's been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years. As long as they open their heart and they start functioning in the kingdom, they're in. There is no period of time. That was very hard even for his own apostles. Their moms often came and asked Jesus, like, will you take care of my kids? Will they be like one on your left and one on your right, thinking that it's going to be a hierarchy, it's going to be like a business or a kingdom, or where he's the head and all these people are high, powerful positions under him. And he knew, he told them, they'll know you by the way, they'll know that you're my followers by the way you love one another, not by a title, not by how long you've been with me. So he was teaching something very important, that in today's business, we feel that self-righteousness. I've been in this position, I have these expectations. And I know you probably can ask me a million questions. I've been in the business world for a little over 30 years now. Actually, I'm too old, so it's more than 30 years. But I've seen all these situations. I applied them myself to myself throughout my career. Is that I showed up every day. I ran in with a big smile on my face, not knowing what's gonna happen to me, and I've been punched left and right by co-workers, by managers. But I also, over my whole career, I built a beautiful, amazing network of people whom I love, and I think they love me back. And I have no expectations. I had no expectations when I worked with them, other than respect and love and understanding, and a good time while we're together doing what we needed to do. At the hardest moments, when we're sitting there at midnight, running against the clock with something, we were able to do amazing work when we actually left titles behind, left all that stuff behind, and just worked with one another around solving a problem, making it a better place. And I've been in small companies, large companies, independent. The guy they kicked out the first day he showed up, the guy who got fired. I wore all those hats, and I can't say that I was as mature when I was in my early to mid 20s as I am today. But I learned my lessons, and especially when I started studying this, that the world opened up to me, and it's a blessing that you just live with each breath when you're following those basic teachings of honoring that Dr. Eric talked about, Jesus telling his apostles not to curse at anybody, not to start fights. We have the great teaching of if somebody slaps you on one cheek, turn the other one, and all those things are fundamental. That when I said in the beginning, these are all fundamental, foundational components for a better world and a better life individually. And if you start compromising any of them, your foundation starts shaking. And Jesus talked about that, about the strong foundation, the rock foundation, how that's the house that stands in the storm versus the ones that are weak. And he saw how, I mean, the Romans, when they came into town, they demolished anybody who resisted them, ultimately setting a place where it became a part of Rome. And you had all the benefits of that if you were a Roman citizen. But they had slavery as well, and they had caste structures and so forth. He wanted to break through all of that. The Jewish religion had veered away. Those are the things that make Christianity unique, in my opinion, and especially early Christianity, in that they went in and innovated in business, innovated in politics, innovated in trade, and changed the way people work together, ultimately to create a better community, a better society. And even though they got a lot of these people lost their lives over time because of running into the Mongols were ruthless with the Christians, the Muslims at points were ruthless, the Japanese authorities, the Chinese authority, yet the people, the meek people, kept bending and kept adjusting and kept surviving until Christianity in the East almost disappeared, and Christianity in the West took a whole different new shape. And I hope that by continuing to talk about that the original teachings and how those teachings were formed and how they expanded and were successful. We have a success formula, we just refuse to follow it sometimes. That's pretty much what I want to talk about today. I'm seeing a few questions. Please send me more if you have more questions. Otherwise, as I always do, I honor time and I stop early. So with that said, let me look at the first question. Okay, so the first question is, I missed the first 10 minutes of the meeting. Who were the first travelers to the East? Do we know who in names? Some of the early churches that were, some of them were actually direct apostles. Apostle Thomas, they claim that he made it all the way to India. In the Assyrian areas, the mountains of northern Iraq, I think they say Apostle Matthew made it there. So if you look at the book of Acts, a lot of these early apostles, the Apostle Paul, he never studied under Jesus. So the title apostle was given to him by the church, but he never studied under Jesus. But a lot of these early, when you read the New Testament, there were a lot of early followers, like 70, 140. So Jesus gathered a good group of people in different areas. Not all of them were traveling with him all the time, like the 12, but he had a posse everywhere he went. And sometimes he sent some of the 12 to villages. So there were other people with him. And we hear about him going to supporters' homes and teaching there. These are the people who got it firsthand. and got a good grasp on the message, as well as they were young, so they lived a long life, or some of them were martyred and got in trouble, but a lot of them had a good life, and they managed to spread the message. And with the Bible, with the actual books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, in those formats, they had enough material to actually understand, because it was cultural as well. So it was easy to form new communities that way. Do you know if there are churches of the East in the United States? There are. So remember, I was talking about Eastern Christianity, not just that there was a church that is called the Church of the East now, and it is a part of the continuation of that very early church that was founded in Jerusalem. So, but again, the Church of the East, and I've been to some of the services. I think Dr. Lamza belonged or was a very close friend to it. As a church, as it formed over time, it took different shapes and different alliances and so forth to keep it alive. But if you read the book, you'll get the idea of how there was the churches of the East, and not as a brand name, and Eastern Christianity, and how it expanded, and then how it started kind of being, shrinking into specific communities and specific denominations, etc. When can we view the recording? The recording, since you have the link, what will happen is when I'm done, I usually get it up and running by tomorrow. So hopefully you'll have access to this on YouTube. And by the way, on YouTube, the way we do things is sometimes we open things for public viewing, so anybody who comes to the YouTube channel can listen to those lessons. And sometimes, because of the material and the nature of the talk, sometimes we decide only people who have subscribed or share their email with us can get access. Those are unlisted videos. And usually with those, you can, like, if you know somebody who might be interested in them, you can forward them that link and they could access that video directly. They might not see other unlisted stuff. So that's the way we're running it, because throughout our ministry, sometimes people misunderstand, and we don't want people to take something I said out of context and make it bad. So if we feel it's safe enough for public viewing, we open it up. If we feel you need the background to understand what we're talking about, we share it just with the people who are present or have subscribed to the channel. Okay. Next question. I have heard that early popes changed scripture to control people. Also with mistranslations, how accurate is the Bible and the Gospels of Jesus? So popes, actually part of what I marked up in this book is that I think that there were a lot of early popes, because the popes were based out of the Byzantine Roman Empire, and Rome was like an outskirt at the time. So for Christianity, it was a further outpost. A lot of those early popes were from the Near East, where they were from Antioch and the early Christian centers. And the language that was used because in the Byzantine side was Greek and Syriac, that according to this book, which is Aramaic. So Greek and Aramaic were the dominant languages of early Christianity. And in the East, which a lot of the churches that were initially built, and that the education centers, Christianity centers in Merv and different areas of the East, all the way like where Turkmenistan is, and Armenia and Georgia. As I said, India, all of Iran, Iraq, the Arabian Peninsula, Yemen, the Emirates, Saudi, all those had Christian centers, and North Africa and Alexandria, Egypt, Libya had a strong church presence. All those had a lot, mainly Eastern influence. As far as the mistranslation, absolutely. And I think it's not the mistranslation as much as it's the combination of mistranslation and misunderstanding and building dogma on stuff that Jesus did not talk about, or taking something that Jesus talked about out of context and building a whole theology on it. And not understanding. I mean, to this day, there's a lot of Christians who believe that Jesus is God, versus what he was talking about. And if you attended Dr. Erico's talk this past Saturday at the School of Light, he talked about Jesus's humanity. So the church has, the mainstream churches have veered away. They built things on mistranslations, as well as misunderstanding and things that serve them. The reason I wanted to do this on innovation is that a lot of what Christianity has become is tied down, and it's not innovating, it's not building on these beautiful foundations. And we started feeling like we can't be Christians at work, we can't be Christians at school, we can't, because again, it's like, I'm gonna wear a cross and be in your face and convert you. That's not the Christianity that I'm talking about. I'm talking about you being the most awesome person you can be in any situation. And imagine if there are, in 20%, 30%, 40%, and that's what was happening early on in the Christian movement. It was villages were changing by these kinds of percentages. One family adopts, gets visited by a messenger who's bringing the good news, and they believe it, and it shifts. And then the next family, and now some families were split, were like, no, we want to stick with the Mosaic law, and some were not, or with the Buddhism versus Christianity, and even during Islam, there were periods where Muslims were allowed to convert to Christianity, and then there was a point where it was like, no, we're not going to allow that anymore. So religion and Jesus's teachings today are very far apart in so many ways, as are any people who are doing things and choosing pieces of the Bible to say, hey, Jesus mentioned that, so it's good enough for us. Well, if you take it out of context and without understanding the cultural background and when he was using idioms, etc., you create a mess. I think that's true of any language. If I took English into somewhere else and try to take some of our idioms, I can create a new religion that is not based on anything that the English language or the culture intended to create. Okay. How accurate is the Bible and the Gospels of Jesus? I think if you go to the Lamsa translation or the Aramaic, I think you're very close. Do you believe in reincarnation? But if I don't, but I don't also, I'm not totally against it. If I'm not against anything if you know me well enough. But for me, the idea of repeating the cycle. Now, Dr. Erico and I talked about this, and there are enough proofs that some people maybe make the trip back, since spirit, well, I believe that our soul does not die, so it continues. Now, whether it chooses to come back into this human experience again for whatever reason, to help people or to do something that they did not finish, that could happen. So I don't have any definitive like, no, it doesn't happen. I'm open-minded to it happening. Do I think I'm gonna come back? I have no idea. I just do my best now, and as Jesus told us, He'll take care of us, and that there is a good place for us where we land at the end. That's my belief. Please comment about the hierarchy that developed in the Greek and Roman churches and their connection to the Roman Empire, which still exists today. So we like hierarchy. I don't know if it's a matter of, there are some people who like the power of the hierarchy, and there are some people who like the delegation of power, so they're not accountable or put on the spot having to make decisions. So the early church, what we read in the book of Acts, everybody took what they owned, so there was no imbalance with financial and so forth. They put all their property together, donated it basically to the early movement. So they could finance and fund these messages, spreading the news, spreading the good news. That's what they were doing, spreading the good news. That's what the gospel is. It's the good news. And they knew that some people will need, they'll need to buy them things to get them there. They needed to pay for the travel to Central Asia or Iraq, or this is all based out of Jerusalem. So it was very flat, but very quickly, somebody had to make a decision, and it was closer to a democracy where they all kind of agreed on, we're going to do this versus do that. But if you create accountable people, and I've seen this in business, the one company that I truly founded and had my imprint on it was, they did not really need an organizational structure. I could count on everybody to make the right decision and to consult with one another when we're not clear which direction we should go. We were true and honest with our customers. We turned some of them away who we couldn't help. So even though we were starving for money, sometimes we told people, we're not the right partner for you. And my personal experience when you tell people that is that they would want to do business with you anyway because they're not used to it. And I signed up people who wanted to become my customers later because I could serve them later, but not at that stage of my business, because I was honest. It's like, I'm turning away business because I really want to give you the best result that you expect of me. But again, as far as hierarchy, I know in the Greek Orthodox Church, they don't really have a pope, but they have like I don't know, I don't want to misquote it, but it's something like the senior of the equals. So somehow we want somebody to sit at the head of the table and make that decision. And when you're all living in the kingdom and functioning from that same space, you'll bring your talents, you'll bring your assets, you'll bring all these things into play, and you'll shine in your own way in the space that you're good at. So I believe that that's doable, and that's the kind of world I want to be in. You see it sometimes, like go to, I'll use like Trader Joe's supermarket. Everybody, they have the idea that they work on a ship is the model that they have. And you ask anybody and they'll go out of their way. They'll go to the back, they'll check in the computer, they'll go talk to the leader of the crew that's available there. So that's a good model. I don't know if they consider themselves Christians or followers of Jesus or any of that stuff, which does not really matter. What matters is when I go there, I feel like there's a team that's going to take good care of me, no matter which one I tap on the shoulder. They'll leave bagging and they'll go do this, or they'll leave the cashier and they'll go do that. That's the kind of, and we could have that in any business. We could have that in any situation in life. Some churches you feel that as well. I've been to churches where you felt I can tap anybody on staff or of the people who are members in the church and get that type of service. Okay, how might we interpret Luke 22:36? Is that the church, the swords part? Let me look at that. Luke 22:36. 22:36. He said to them, from now on, he who has purses, let him take them, and the bag likewise. And he who has no sword, let him sell his robe and buy for himself a sword. For I say to you, this is continuing to 37, for I say to you that what is written must be fulfilled in me. He will be numbered among the wicked, for all the things concerning me will be fulfilled. So, and then continuing his apostles then, and they said to him, our Lord, behold, here are two swords. He said to them, that is enough. Okay, so now there is a, if you do a search on this verse on the internet, there is a lot of interpretation, and the most dangerous one, I think, is it says that self-defense with a sword is acceptable. The way I take it is I think he was speaking metaphorically that bad times are coming. When I leave you, and first he was predicting his own death. He was saying, I'm going to be martyred, I'm going to be misunderstood, but I'm not going to run away, because soon after that he goes into his prayer right before they arrest him. And and then when one of his apostles pulls the sword out, he tells them, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Now going back to Matthew, because it doesn't say it quite in Luke that way, he just says that's enough in Luke. So there is no situation, in my opinion, where Jesus from the beginning wanted to create a nation, wanted to create an army, wanted to actually carry weapons for protection or for attack. It's you lose your humanity when you take somebody else's life. If somebody chooses to do it, that's their choice. If you make that choice to protect your TV, I'm gonna, shoot somebody, or to protect whatever possessions I have in my house. Somebody walks in and I actually choose to take their life away. Or threaten them with a sword or a weapon. There is a part of us that dies, and we can't recover from that. What is around me here that I'm taking with me that is worth taking anybody's life or injuring somebody over it? People who have heard me talk before, I said if somebody walks in and is threatening, my initial reaction, and I hope I can live for that, hopefully nobody will pick on me, but if somebody does, my initial reaction is going to be, I don't want any harm to myself or to you. What is it that you need out of this? There is nothing in here that is dear enough to me that would make me kill somebody or hurt them, or die for. So if they are tweaked and they're going to shoot me anyway or beat me up anyway, that's on them, not on me. But I will not lose my humanity in that situation. So I think Jesus was exaggerating and was telling them bad times are coming, and you have to be ready for them. I don't think he was telling them carry arms, because there was no way in hell that little movement was going to defeat the Roman army or even the guards of the temple. So that's my take on it. And if you disagree, you can put more comments in here. How am I doing on time? Okay, 5 more minutes. Would you provide the name of your YouTube link, please? Yes. It is. Reach out. There is a link on nuhra.com. I have on the front page, there is a place where it has a YouTube message. Go to that. If not, send us a message to the Nuhra Foundation. I will share that with you. What is the good news? The good news is the kingdom of God. When Jesus arrived at the scene, if you read it in the gospel, he said, the time is now, the old age has ended, and the kingdom of God is at hand. That was what was Jesus's core message. The reason he dedicated his life and lost his life and did all the stuff he did was to tell us that God is amongst us. His presence and his kingdom is here, and it's here now. And we can choose to live in it, or we can choose to ignore it and continue to struggle and suffer. And that's the good news. That's the meaning. The word of the gospel is that it means the good news. And the last comment is, I'm confused. Are you saying Jesus is not divine? I'm not saying he's not divine, because he is, but so are you. The divinity of Jesus, according to his teachings, according to how he spoke about himself and about us, he constantly said, you do these things, you are also the children of God. To be children of God, you must do this, this, and that. You must behave this way and that way. So he was constantly saying, I am not God. And I just gave you an example a minute ago in the Gospel of Luke, I believe, that he constantly humbled himself, but he knew that we are all from God. We are in the image and in the likeness of God. This is back to Genesis. When God created us, he did not create something different. He created something in the image and in the likeness of God. So we all share that DNA. We all share that connection, regardless of what age we live in, what year we live in. So Jesus is divine, but so are you. So are all of us, and that's why. For us to have a good life, we have to be aware of that and love one another that way and treat one another based on that principle to reach that highest level of being called children of God. And I'll end with that. So thank you so much for joining us, and I will be missing my next session. So I probably, Dr. Erica will do next week and the week after. I'm traveling. And then when I come back, I will continue. I don't know what topic I want to go with. So if you have any ideas or some areas that intrigue you, you want me to get into, please send them an email to the Nuhra Foundation, as well as any questions that you'd like me to answer that I did not answer tonight. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you next week. I'll be with Dr. Erico on the call, but then I'll do the session in 3 weeks, actually. Take care. Have a great evening, and till then.